Good evening, church. I'm just going to dive right in the interest of time. Today's lesson plan is 50. Jesus withdraws from Herod's territory. Now, before I got into this, while I was doing this study, I had to really get an in-depth understanding as to who Herod was in this schematics of things with Jesus withdrawing from the territory. Now, Herod Antipas is known mostly as the Herod for whom Salome danced and who ordered John the Baptist to be beheaded. Herod Antipas ruled Galilee in Jesus' time, and he succeeded his father, Herod the Great, and served as a tetrarch appointed by the emperor, Augustus, throughout that time period, 4 BC until 39 AD. Now, according to the biblical scholars, looking at this time frame that Herod ruled, and as it's depicted in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Herod Antipas's attitude towards Jesus was somewhat, I would say, vague or indecisive, meaning through the time period in which Jesus was roaming through their territory, Herod really never had much of a say pertaining to Jesus and the 12 disciples at that time. In Matthew and Mark, Herod Antipas, he's a bit ambivalent with regard to Jesus. Both Gospels quote Herod Antipas as saying after he has had Jesus, John the Baptist executed, that Jesus was actually John resurrected, as it's stated in Matthew 14, 1 and 2, and Mark 6, 14 and 6. Now, both Gospels stated that Antipas was actually saddened by Salome's request to have John beheaded, as it's stated there. And they seem to blame Salome and her mother, Herodias, for John's execution. Bound by his own oath, Antipas is nevertheless forced to fulfill his promise to Salome by proceeding to behead John the Baptist at that time. Now, as we fast forward things, and we see that Jesus was in this territory here, as we stated, the ruling of Herod was around here in Galilee. You see where it's depicted there, right above Samaria. In this particular instance, as when Jesus was actually traveling through that area, a number of things occurred. Well, firstly, as it's stated in the first verses here in Matthew 15, when Peter explained the parable to us, and it stated, "Are you still dull?" Jesus responded. Jesus asked them, "Don't you see that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then out of the body? But the things that come out of the person's mouth come from the heart, and these defile them. For from out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. These are what defile a person, but eating with unwashed hands do not defile them." Now, in Jesus's response there, it shows that in that time, the people were caught up with custom, they were caught up with tradition, and Jesus's response to them in that instance was, none of those things really matter. The focus really should be on us just really understanding Christ and us just really having the belief in what was being shared, as opposed to getting caught up with custom. So it really kind of highlights how people thought in that particular time. Think of it as Jesus going through this land. It really wasn't a mission trip per se, but he was going through the land and he was still healing. He was still doing things. And people were just wondering, how does this fit into things? It's not what we do as a tradition, what might have you. So his main aim there was to dispel that. A second thing to highlight also to is, as he was going through that area, Herod's territory, and he was basically healing and assisting the sick, he was pretty much telling everyone not to say much. Let's not say much about this. I want to help you. I want to assist you, but I really don't want to bring a lot of attention to myself in doing so. Now, it fast forward things into the other verses here in Mark. As it states, Jesus left that place and went to the vicinity of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know it. Yet he could not keep his presence secret. meaning whatever he did within that time frame or with whatever house or whoever he interacted with, those individuals told someone else, and then they told someone else. And before you know it, it spread like wildfire. Wherever Jesus went and he was performing miracles, there were individuals following him. Now, this was not the first time that Jesus withdrew or fled. I mean, the first time it was more for, hey, we wanted to kill him. The second time it was more of, hey, we really just want to raise you up because you're doing so much in this community. It really wasn't his time yet, even though we all know that he was the Son of Man, but he wasn't officially crowned as yet. But he was still performing miracles as he was actually going through the area. Another thing to highlight was it stated, well, there was a woman with a daughter that was demon possessed. And when she saw Jesus and she approached Jesus, she was asking Jesus, could you help my daughter? Could you free the demon? Now, the interesting part to this particular story that the woman was a Greek. She was born in Syrian Phoenicia. She begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her. Now, first let the children eat all they want. And that was the response, he told her. For it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to dogs. Then he told her, for such a reply, you may go, and the demon has left your daughter. Now, when it comes to that level of interaction from, I would say, Greeks, that level of interaction doesn't occur. When you're from certain parts, when you're from certain regions, you having these discussions, they just don't happen. So in a case like this, with this woman reaching out to Jesus, I would say reaching across the lines and begging for assistance, it shows a level of faith in her end. It shows a level of belief in her end to know that I know I shouldn't be having this interaction, but I'm going to have this interaction nonetheless. And I'm going to go forward with my belief that something will occur, which it did, which is the healing of her daughter in this case. And I would say Jesus healed the daughter of the Canaanite woman. I mentioned that already. And I would say last but not least here, remember, Jesus was avoiding Herod's territory. He left Tyre, he traveled to the north of Sidon, then he traveled east. He then traveled south along the eastern coast to the Sea of Galilee, as Matthew 15:30 stated. Now, these large crowds kept gathering and gathering and gathering over time. But the crowd had a different composition and a different feel this time, as I stated, than before. This time it was individuals bringing more the lame, the sick, people actually getting caught on to the word and the message that was being shared at that particular time. And they wanted more of it. They wanted more of Jesus's presence within them. In conclusion, I can definitely say that one of the things to learn here, as we mentioned here, just as a brief recap, one of the biggest takeaways here is to have consistent persistence when it comes to Jesus. I would say, first and foremost, that lady with the daughter, if she was not persistent with her faith, nothing would have occurred. If she recognized and she followed the traditions of that particular day and the customs of that day, she would not even attempt to have that interaction with Jesus, first and foremost. Secondly, to have that deep faith when it comes to whatever you're doing in Christ. If you're going to make a move to go towards Christ with an interaction, have that deep level of faith that what you're about to do will occur. And she had that level of faith, and it was demonstrated, and it showed, and it proved to fruition in the result of her daughter. So I think that's all for the time that I'm permitted. I'm going to hand it back to you at this time. Thank you all.